Welcome to the Talent Revolution, Tales from the Trenches. I'm your host, Joe Shambaum.
And I'm Jill Caniglio-Kirk. Today, I'm excited to announce our special guest, Ritu Barkotoky. Ritu has a very impressive career with over 15 years of experience in human resource, an extremely strong background in talent management and people development. And she recently founded her own business, Thrive Impact, leadership coaching and consulting. And she's a ICF certified coach. Ritu, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today and have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited to dig in today here. So thanks again.
Ritu, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell the listeners a little bit about your background and your career.
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. I am Ritu Barkotoky. I have been in human resources and talent management space for over 15 years now. I currently work for an automotive company in Detroit area as a head of talent management. And my passion is talent and coaching and leadership development.
Awesome, and welcome to the show. So for today's topic, I got a really big question, and it's really complicated, guys. So think about it. We're in an organization, right? We've got sales are a little bit low, so we've got a lot of pressure coming through to us. We've got new leadership that came in. We've got new managers that are there. We've got launches that need to happen, whether it's in manufacturing or in software, and there's a quality issue happening. We're still trying to recruit many different people. How do we do this? How do we help the business? How do we drive all of this chaos to being calm, cool, and collective? Help me, HR. How do we do this?
Great question, Joe. So Ritu, I know you've got so many tools in your toolbox, given your background. Describing some of Joe's dynamics there, where do you start really as an HR professional and as a person with a coaching background to kind of help bring calm in times of chaos?
Absolutely. Well, such a great question. And chaos is not just noise or confusion. It can be a disruption that basically shakes up the status quo. And when we think about chaos, it could be in terms of layoffs or sudden restructuring. It could be teams are split and roles are unclear. Or it could be, hyper growth phase where organization is scaling so fast that systems and people are unable to keep up. And it could be, events like pandemic or political unrest that triggers uncertainty and change. And human emotions, it's unpredictable, and people feel that pain essentially. So chaos can come in many forms. And being in HR, it's important that we are able to guide our organization and people. And coaching actually plays an interesting role because coaching actually makes us take a step back and take a pause and helps us be more reflective versus more reactive.
So how do you push the leaders who keep saying, I'm sure, I don't have time for this, or I need to do this? How do you get them to slow down, get that reflection so they can move forward and be more effective, right? We all know that, but they're not seeing it. So, I'm sure both of you have been in those types of situations. Ritu, maybe you want to start with, what can you do to get that leader into that frame of mind?
Absolutely. And being a leader, it's important to, have that calm, and especially in times of chaos. And it's easier said than done because, as a leader, they have so many responsibilities. They have to look for the business. They have to take care of the people. So it's not easy at all. But finding that ground or grounding where they can take a reflection, look back and think in terms of what is working right now and what is not working, and how can they find clarity within. And coaching helps because coaching, again, we ask about, what really matters right now, and how can we reflect on what can we do versus there are so many things that are falling apart and so many things that we are not doing right, essentially.
Yeah. Something interesting as you were talking, Ritu, that I was thinking about was in these times of chaos, without really using the topic of coaching, I think one of the most effective ways I've really gotten people's attention around this is really being a good listener, kind of being sensitive and asking the right questions at the right time, where people start at the very top, kind of, they don't even realize it's a coaching session, right? It's not
Right.
on a calendar as a coaching session, right? And then, perhaps steering them through this process. And, I think when Joe talks about how do you get people's attention and time, sometimes you have to trick them, right? And sometimes you just kind of have to be a little sneaky about how you navigate this stuff. And then as you go through that process, I find people see the value of
Mm.
taking the step back, slowing down, having an objective person go through this process with them, right? And then perhaps it's
Absolutely.
easier to convince them that you can help their team or people in their team, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because, even I've done that, guys, even in the more talent acquisition side, is sitting down and been in those meetings with those leaders. And it's really, it's asking those other questions. And then they start opening up, right? And they start sharing and they start, discussing some of the frustrations and the others, which ends up being a good cleansing situation. And you're not even trying to solve a problem, but it allows them to think through
Absolutely.
that. And then you're poking at those questions. And what I've done is then also take that back to my HR business partners or HR directors saying, hey, listen, I've learned something here. You might want to dive a little bit deeper into these because of, there's stress for a restructuring that's going on, or like you said, the growth, they're just overwhelmed. How do we support that in getting the leader? So for me, I always use that as nuggets of information on building a great rapport, but then also passing that off because there's other experts like your guys self on the more HR side to take that because it could stem into other situations.
Ritu, I know there are audience members sitting out there that aren't as familiar with coaching. I'd love to get your perspective on explaining coaching and maybe sharing what it is and what it is not for our audience.
Well, thank you for the question. That's a powerful question, and I think it's a very important one because most times, in my experience, people do confuse or mistake coaching with consulting and or mentoring as well. So when we think about coaching, so with coaching, as a coach, I don't tell people what to do. I help people help themselves and help find clarity within themselves. And consultants, they bring answers. And you can think of coaching as coaching brings questions. And mentoring is focused more on providing specific guidance on a specific topic. It could be technical, it could be non-technical, and it's for a certain period of time. So that being said, and going back to our topic of chaos, in times of chaos, when people they're struggling with finding clarity within in general, coaching actually helps with finding that inner clarity with powerful questions and open-ended questions, because then the client essentially is digging within themselves and not looking for answer from somebody.
Yeah, would you liken it to you're teaching them how to fish, so to speak? Is that a good analogy for the process a bit? Like you're giving them a skill that they can then take and build on?
That's a good point. It's interesting actually. I haven't thought of coaching as providing a skill more than kind of experience. So it's a process,
Mhm.
and thinking in terms of like going through a process and experiencing the process and finding more clarity and digging deeper and coming out through that process with a better version of ourselves. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So is there tools or frameworks that you suggest or that's out there that, whether it's big, small, any type of organization, even not even in HR, that they could maybe use or look up that would that would help somebody in those situations?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, nowadays, if you just search on a search engine for coaching tools, there will be plenty available. I know people talk about grow methodology, and I actually have taken extensive training with Coactive Institute. So I do have coactive tools. I follow coactive methodology for coaching, and then ICF coaching standards as well. And again, those tools are available online, and there's a lot of literature also available. But again, thinking in terms of, a couple of principles as a coach that I follow is, as a coach, I have to be there for my client. And when I coach my clients, I have to put their interest at the front and center. I have to keep myself away. I have to make sure that I am not reflecting my own interest in their interest. And I'm being non-judgmental. I'm unbiased, and I am letting client to be fully themselves.
It's really,
So
really important to kind of understand that. And I would imagine that having them in the right frame of mind and being open to this is really an imperative criteria for having it be an effective process. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's such a great point. So that's so true, because coaching cannot be forced. A client needs to be willingly interested, or willingly coming to a coach to be coached. So nobody should force anybody to be coached, because that will not yield the right results.
So I gotta ask, guys, and no details, but is there an example of someone that you've coached or worked with that you had to turn that around? Because I'm sure especially, in certain types of organizations, they're like, I don't need this stuff, I don't need to be coached, and I don't need these things, and they're very apprehensive. So is there a little story that anyone has on turning somebody around to getting to be open? Maybe later. Would love to, or the listeners would, because it would be fun. Because I mean, I'm sure that's happened for not just any
Yeah.
HR person, but any leader out there. So,
Well, I'm going to let Ritu think about it, but I'm going to just share one of my secrets, which is, as HR professionals, I think we, especially when we're working within our own organization versus with an external client, we have the benefit of knowing that person's personality, their profile, right? Other behavioral things and information from them that give us cues as to how open or closed will they be about this. And, what is the best time, place, and scenario to kind of find your way in and kind of earn that trust and earn that window. So I would just say I've certainly tailored my tactics of how to kind of get to that point based on who that individual is, kind of using that roadmap, so to speak, of who they are to try to find the right entry point, because I think timing is always everything. And, kind of sometimes using that trickery or trying to make it appear you're doing something else, right? Maybe inviting someone to say, hey, could you ride with me on this 4-hour car ride back because XYZ? But maybe my intention is I really want them with me because I want them in this setting where we can kind of dig into some things and perhaps, take advantage of that time and maybe have more of a coaching conversation. But Ritu, I'd love to get your perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those are very good points. I think of coaching as, if somebody is not interested, and if there is a mandate from the company that this person needs to be coached or needs to have coaching, and they are not interested, I think it's important to know what is holding them back. What could be a reason why they're so against coaching? So without sharing too much, I did have situations where I was told by the manager that, hey, so and so would appreciate coaching, would you please work with them? So my approach has been that I do need the consent and the interest from the client to be part of this coaching conversation. And if they are not, then I would like to have a sit down conversation with them and what is holding them back and kind of go from there. Because, in my experience, I would not begin a coaching relationship or a coaching conversation without understanding if there are reasons why they don't want to be coached or what is holding them back, essentially.
Or what that potential, situation is that needs to be coached, whether it's leadership, maybe, whether it's managing others or whatever that other topic could be, right? There's a reason, and then you can hone in on that. So what about, guys, go back to kind of the scenario and the whole chaos situation. So how do you coach instead of one-on-one, maybe the organization, right? I mean, because we all shift and move an organization in this chaos, and the coaching and mentorship is maybe for a department or a function. Is there ideas, tips, tricks, scenarios that way that you guys could share on maybe more of a larger group versus one-on-one?
Sure. Yeah. So team coaching is another area that many organizations focus on, and it's basically for a few reasons: to have that team camaraderie, as well as to basically achieve something together with aligned responsibilities and aligned goals for a team. And it also helps with time savings and sometimes cost savings as well, because one-on-one coaching needs more time, attention, focus, and cost is also a factor. So it helps with all of that, and it helps drive a particular goal for a team.
Okay. And in some of these, especially when some of those events, right, say there's a restructuring or a COVID-19 world or different other things, does culture get mixed into coaching and mentoring as a bigger group? Does that play into it? And I'm going in the wrong direction here, guys, but does that play into that world of it?
A thought, and I will let Jill also chime in. So culture does play a role, because if an organization is focused on coaching, or if an organization even wants to offer coaching, then they are creating a culture where it's employee first. They are providing opportunities to employees to be developed, to grow, to find their best potential, essentially. So it is a culture shift that needs to occur within companies to be more coaching focused. And again, going back to the times of chaos, it is important to recognize what can we do for our employees so that we help them in this situation and help them find calm and grounding to navigate this, uncertainties and the chaos.
Yeah, one thought I have there, Ritu, about this uncertainty and this chaos in an organization really is, how do you really bring your leaders along and helping them maybe not become certified coaches, but give them tools and comfort with how to approach coaching and make that part of their one-on-one process with their employees. Have you had experience with navigating that and trying to help an organization try to adopt that methodology and philosophy with leadership development?
Yes, and coaching and feedback is part of many leadership training and development. So that is an important piece to building a culture. And if an organization is interested in building a high performance culture, feedback and coaching are critical, because we need to provide or give information to our employees in what areas they are excelling, what areas they are not, and what they need, in times of uncertainties, or maybe there is a need for skill development. So that coaching and feedback play a very critical role in general. But in times of chaos, definitely more.
And I would just echo that and say that that real-time feedback following a meeting, right? Sitting down with your boss after a meeting and saying, this is what went well, this is what maybe could have been better next time, right? And making it more of a regular practice.
Right.
That's in the light of feedback. Of course, that's not coaching, right? The coaching method would be how, so how did you feel about that, right?
Right.
And approaching it from a question perspective. But I feel like if an organization is moving in that direction, they're definitely going to be really pleased with their results because people can real time, connect with that feedback, connect with that reflection, and incorporate that much quicker into, where it leads them from a performance perspective.
So that
Absolutely.
leads into my question then, guys. How do you measure that? How do you know that that's actually happening? We're making, whether it's a culture, coaching, mentorship, how do you, I know you can do surveys, but how do you know that it's actually working, right? And all that stuff. Is there a measurement? Is there an index? I don't know what that is. I mean, how do you know that?
Um, Sometimes organizations do integrate coaching and feedback as part of, goal setting and performance review process. And nowadays we have systems and HRIS talent management systems that actually they have good features in place where employee and manager can actually update their comments in the system versus taking notes outside and forgetting where they wrote what. So systems are helpful as well. So making, if we want to formalize it, if we want to keep track, and if we want to measure it, performance goal setting and performance review process can actually help with that and ensure that regular conversations on feedback and what's working well, what's not working well, they are captured essentially. And organizations also sometimes focus on the mid-year goal checking, quarterly goal checking, or goal setting, or performance reviews. So those are also helpful tools. But again, it depends how much time and effort and energy we want to spend. And that is a decision that an organization needs to make on the frequency of having those conversations and feedback and so on.
It was just, data is everywhere, right? So how can we
Yeah,
track and monitor the data? If there's data to be able to showcase progress, and changing a behavior or a situation takes time, as you said, and it's
absolutely.
hard to measure potentially. Besides, I know you, like I said, there's surveys, but performance reviews and other goal setting is a great way to do that. I was curious. Is there any myths about coaching and different situations like that? Like, is there a faux pas that we need to correct for the audience from you guys?
Um, one thing that comes to mind is many times coaching is thought of as a venting session. And it can be venting, but it's essentially it is intentional reflection with accountability and growth. Because in my coaching sessions, I do focus a lot on inner clarity, finding inner clarity and finding inner self. Because as a leader, who we are as human beings, what are our values, what are our strengths, and how we show up, how our values show up, how how our strengths show up, and what happens when our values are not in alignment, and how we react. Those are very, very important, topics to think about. So coaching essentially is not therapy. Also, coaching is
Right.
it's more future focused. It's about helping the individual um, think about future and how they can grow into the future that they want to see themselves in.
Yeah,
So you mean
one
it's
word.
not sitting on the couch and telling that it's my parents' fault or something like that? It's not like that. Just kidding.
That would be therapy, yes.
Yeah, that's therapy, right? Fair
Right.
enough. Jill, you were
One,
gonna say something?
yes, one word you spoke about in what we just went through was accountability. I'd love to hear your perspective on, as a coach, how do you drive accountability in the process, and why is that so important?
Yes, that's a brilliant question, a tough one. Um, accountability is also, as a coach, and I had mentioned in the beginning that coaches don't tell clients what to do, correct? So it kind of counterintuitive to say that, we have to hold our clients accountable as well. So there is a fine line between telling them what to do, and also holding a space and respect for each other, for the relationship and for the session itself. So something we call it, it's called designing a session or discovery session. And that happens, it can happen in every session, or it can happen in the very beginning of the coaching process, where the client and coach, they come together and they set expectations, and what each session may look like, what happens at the end of each session, and how is accountability held, or what accountability even looks like. So basically, client and coach, they design that whole process and accountability together so that client owns it and coach is not telling them what to do.
Right, right. But it's an important part of framing. What are we going to do here together? It's all decided by the client, but you're helping
Right.
kind of guide that process through the questions, through the probing process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I'd love to know, and I know Joe Shambaum, as a TA expert, has a lot of favorite questions up his sleeve for interviews. I would love to know, what are maybe some of your most powerful questions, or kind of, do you have any tips for our listeners who are, dabbling in coaching as HR professionals, that you find are kind of your golden nuggets?
Yes. So one question I always ask in the end is, what is your takeaway? And and hold them accountable through their takeaways, essentially, and making sure that they are able to commit to one of the takeaways that they identified. That's one. And then one powerful question that I ask, during the coaching session, as we are kind of probing, learning a little bit more, that's basically, what do you know to be true right now?
That I'm sure stops people dead in their tracks.
Yeah,
that one would kind of give me that,
What do you know to be true? Interesting. Okay. So the other thing that I just heard is you give everybody homework then. Is that right?
That is true.
Okay.
That's part of the deal.
Fair enough.
So, Joe, what do you know to be true?
What's the topic? Because I know a lot of things to be true and untrue. So
I like that. That is powerful.
Love it. Love that takeaway on that side of it. Which the other part of takeaway is our stories. So story time. Who's got one that wants to share up of a tale? Again, something to be able to share into this world of chaos, coaching, support, all different things. Does anyone have one that wants to go first? All right. So I've been in a few where, and this is more generic in things, but I've noticed, especially in a bigger situation, when there's a lot of growth and a lot of things, it gets very confusing for folks, especially on the team. And I've always just laid into the fact of full disclosure, right? As transparent as you can, drive through that to calm the storm, right? Calm the frustration, give clarity as much as you can, give the outlook where you're doing. So you're giving confidence back to the team when there's uncertainty, is where I've been able to do as a leader in many different ways, whether I'm the leader or even just, a person in there. Because again, if we're all spinning around a circle, it's not going to help anything, right? And we're all going to be, chit chatting and talking. Let's clear it out. Let's drive forward, and really help steer the ship is really what I'm trying to say in doing that. And it's really helped because that chaos is just frustrating for everybody, right? And they're like, I don't know what to do. Well, okay, well, then let's break that down. What do you need, right? And whether it was when I was leading and managing a team or just helping mentor other folks, and then even managers, because I've been in many discussions and they're like, Joe, man, this is just really frustrating and chaos and unclear of different things. And then I sit down and do that. And I'm not a certified coach, but you're able to be there because you're a peer or a support, a confidant to be able to then do that because I've gained people's trust and be able to drive through that. And I know that's really not a full tale in a sense, and everyone's going, yeah, Joe, we all do that. But you have to recognize that in the moment and really then help support and drive that. And again, you don't have to be the manager or the leader, the director, the VP, the president to do that. We all have ownership in companies to be able to help drive that. And that's my point in that whole story.
Very well said. I think I can share something here, I guess. I had coached someone at a very high level position in a company that was going through massive change. The leader was actually managing a team and that had been restructured, and the team and the leader themselves, they were basically going through a lot of chaos, and the leader was trying to prove themselves to a new CEO. So the default essentially was to overwork for the individual and to take control of everything, because in their mind, the more they could oversee things, more they could manage, they felt in control. So that basically took a toll on this individual, and as human beings, we can only handle and manage so many things, right, at the same time. So the coaching actually helped the individual to kind of feel unstuck from the rescuer mode, and from constantly solving problems to trust the team and empower the team and delegate. Nice. So we also, I mentioned a little bit on the values. We also explored the values, and we found that the leaders' values of trust and growth were actually getting clashed with this, feeling in control tendency. So we explored that, and we also incorporated, mindfulness, breath work, techniques, so that the leader was able to reset their nervous system essentially, and that actually helped a lot. They basically started to delegate more. They saw the big picture. They were able to take a step back, reflect, versus constantly be reactive, and that helped them see the big picture.
It probably helped their team too, then, Ritu, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, one of the things I was able to do with several leaders that I built trust with and maybe had, some coaching, I guess, sessions with, was really kind of get to this place where we had this kind of open code word type language, right? Because sometimes when you're a coach, you're not able to observe someone else, right? Because you don't work together, you're not there. So I would just say getting to that place where you're also in an environment that you can actually kind of maybe see someone's cues, right, and help service that and kind of build that type of trust. But what I decided to do is really kind of be vulnerable and open up with this person and say, I need you to be this for me, and I'm going to be this for you, and kind of make a pact, right, and say we're going to kind of hold each other accountable. And every HR professional needs someone else, right, to help them as well. And I would just say that definitely was a very positive experience for me and for that person to kind of have that relationship where we really can kind of help each other and lean on each other. So I don't know if it's really a tale in our normal sense, Joe, but I think
No, but
getting
it's
to that place with someone, and I think honestly, Joe, you and I are kind of developing quite a relationship through the work we're doing here, and we can have conversations like that with each other, right? And help each other and hold each other accountable. And I think that's all part of this journey with development and, reflection and all those other things. So,
and I think you mentioned the one piece is sometimes you have to give to be able to get that back, right? And
right.
and therefore they can see that you're being vulnerable or you're sharing a story, which will then allow them to open up, right? So that's that two-way street instead of sitting there, maybe more that therapist side of thing is tell me what's going on versus let's share and talk. So you get that kind of correlation back together. And, I've noticed, I mean, for my world, it's a lot more proof in the pudding. Go give me candidates, but you're building that rapport and you're able to do that. And coaching and mentoring is a little bit different, but we all get the same aspect of it. Well, final thoughts, everyone. I guess Ritu, kind of maybe a summary, final thoughts, takeaways that you may want to share with the listeners here.
Yeah, well, final takeaways. First of all, it was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show. And takeaway is, you know, most times I say to my clients as a coach that you don't have to have all the answers. And, as a coach, my job is to ask questions, but it is okay to not have answers. As long as the client is holding space for truth to surface, because truth will surface at one point. Holding space, be able to reflect, be able to sit in that moment sometimes helps, and it helps to bring clarity to the top.
Very well said.
Jill, any summary or takeaway for yourself?
I really am reflecting on some of your analogies or comparison to what coaching is and is not. And for me, it was a really good reminder to hear that you can't bring solutions to a conversation. And for some people, that's very challenging. And I happen to be one of those people. I love to solve problems, right? So it was a good reminder for me to kind of walk away from this, next time I'm in a situation to kind of make sure that I'm respecting those boundaries and that when I'm playing the role of coach, that I'm not, kind of getting the lines blurred there. So for me, that's certainly a takeaway that I'll reflect on, knowing some of who I am and how I like to solve problems and make sure I'm kind of respecting that process.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other side for me is really everyone, it's going to be known, but you got to slow down, like Ritu said, right? You got to take that, you got to reflect, you got to slow the whole process down, break it into different pieces, and really, then tackle it ahead of time, right? You can't bite off everything, and you got to work together on the different sides of it. So it's an awesome world, but we gotta, there's chaos everywhere, but we got to make sense of it. We got to slow down. We got to solve those different pieces in chewable spots versus all at once. Want to thank everyone. I think great session, great conversation and topic. Tune in for more. Follow, like, and share, of course, the Talent Revolution, Tales from the Trenches. And want to thank everyone and appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Goodbye.